Hello, children. I'm here reading Harry Potter to you, and I'm not going to start until I have officially added a link so that people can join. Hold on a sec. Yo, what's up, Galaxy Edge? What am I doing here? Today I'm going to be reading you Harry Potter. I have school. Why are you here? Go to school. Shoo. Go to school. Your education is important, my dude. Go. Hey, Raindrop. What's up, sister? Hold on. I have to add a link so that my friends can join. Okay, hold on. I need to get a link to this live stream real quickly. Hold on. I need to copy this link and put it into my thing. But anyways, everyone. Hello, dudes. Okay, so I'm going to read you guys Harry Potter. So, I just put in the link, so I think people can join. Let me just check. Let's see. Please work. Oh, hey, we did it. Hey, okay. I'm waiting for class to start. What? Okay. So, while we're doing that, I'm going to start reading. So, last time we were reading, we are on chapter 3, I'm pretty sure. Let me just check. So, why not be in the live stream? Hey! So, we are on chapter 3, Letters from No One. Basically, Harry got trapped. We're reading Harry Potter Galaxy Edge. Harry Potter got trapped in his cupboard because he released a boa constrictor on his cousin by accident. Because he's a noob, you know? So, why though? Because I can, Galaxy. I mean, Raindrop. I called you Galaxy, my apologies. But, because I can. Oh, my dog's here. My dog is here. Hi, Luna. Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah, okay, good. Okay. I read that book. Hey! Okay. Everyone say bye to my sister. You have a dog?
Bye,
yes, I have a dog.
Everyone.
My sister said bye.
Make sure to subscribe to her channel.
Yes, free endorsement. Okay. So, my sister left now, so I read the whole series and hi. Yeah, so did I. So anyways, over here it says, we got up to the part where Harry was asking his Aunt Petunia why there was a horrible smell in the kitchen.
Oh, and guys, I forgot to tell you, make sure to subscribe for videos that Tori plays. Roblox adopts me.
Stop. I'm not playing. Oh my gosh.
I was kidding. I was actually kidding.
Shoo, my child. I try and I try. Good thing my bro isn't here, so let's just see if anybody else is gonna join the stream. I just want to check. So, yeah, I don't think anyone else is gonna join. So, oh my gosh, what was happening? My sister broke into my room and she was trying to say when your sister doesn't bother you and doesn't leave you. Yeah, it's fine though, because I love her. So, are you guys ready to read the book? Are you guys ready? I don't know. My existence is weird. Say hello. Yes. Okay. Let me clear my throat. What's this? He asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened. Her lips tightened as they always did if he dared to ask a question. Your new school uniform, she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. Oh, he said. I didn't realize it had to be so wet. Don't be stupid, snapped Aunt Petunia. I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old things gray for you. It'll look just like everyone else's when I've finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High. Like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Aunt Vernon came in, both wrinkled noses because of the smell coming from Harry's new uniform. Ah, yes, nice truth. Okay. Okay. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in, both with wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his smelting stick, which he carried everywhere, on the table. They heard the click of the mail slot and flop of letters on the doormat. It must stink, yeah. Get the mail, Dudley, said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. Make Harry get it. Get the mail, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dodged the smelting stick. Ah! These diddly darn British words. Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to get the mail. 3 things lay on the doormat. A postcard from Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, who was vacationing on the Isle of Wight, a brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it, his heart twanging like a giant elastic band. No one in his whole life had ever written to him. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he'd never even got rude notes asking for books back. Yet here it was, a letter addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Gotta go, I have to class now. Okay, bye, Galaxy. Mr. H. Potter, The Cupboard Under the Stairs, Number 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging Survey. Okay. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment. The address was written in emerald green ink.
Make sure to subscribe for cookies.
Sophia.
Bye.
Okay, basta. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment. The address was written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand trembling, Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, surrounding a large letter H. Hurry up, boy, shouted Uncle Vernon from the kitchen. What are you doing there, checking for letter bombs? He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and postcard, and sat down and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Vernon ripped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped over the postcard. Marge is ill, he informed Aunt Petunia. It a funny whelk. Dad, said Dudley suddenly. Dad, Harry's got something. Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written on the same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was jerked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Vernon. That's mine, said Harry, trying to snatch it back. Who'd be writing to you? Sneered Uncle Vernon, shaking the letter open with one hand and glancing at it. His face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights. Yeah, and it didn't stop there. Within seconds, it was a grayish white of old porridge. Petunia, he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment, it looked as though she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon! This is weird. They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head with his smelting stick. I want to read that letter, he said loudly. I want to read it, said Harry furiously, as it's mine. Get out, both of you, croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside its envelope. Wait, if he's thick too, doesn't it mean that he is a little small, and Harry can just climb up and grab the letter? Yeah, that's so true, though. Get out, both of you, croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside its envelope. Harry didn't move. I want my letter, he shouted. Let me see it, demanded Dudley. Out, roared Uncle Vernon, and he took both Harry and Dudley by the scruffs of their necks and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Harry and Dudley promptly had a furious but silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack beneath the door on the floor. Vernon, Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house? Watching, spying, might be following us, uttered Uncle Vernon wildly. But what should we do, Vernon? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want? Harry could see Uncle Vernon's shiny black shoes pacing up and down the kitchen. No, he said finally. No, we'll ignore it. And if they don't get any answer, that's best. We won't do anything. But I'm not going to have one in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him in we'd stamp out that dangerous nonsense? Ooh. That evening, when he got back from work, Uncle Vernon did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry in his cupboard. Where's my letter? said Harry the moment Uncle Vernon had squeezed through the door. Who was writing to me? No one. It was addressed to you by mistake, said Uncle Vernon shortly. I've burned it. It was not a mistake, said Harry angrily. It had my cupboard on it. Silence! Ooh! That was loud, yelled Uncle Vernon, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and then forced a smile into his face, which looked quite painful. Yes, Harry. About this cupboard. Your aunt and I have been thinking. You're getting a bit too big for it. We think it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom. Why? Said Harry. Don't ask questions, snapped his uncle. Take this stuff upstairs, now. The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, one for visitors, usually Uncle Vernon's sister, and one where Dudley slept, and one where Dudley kept all his toys and things that wouldn't fit in his first bedroom. It only took Harry one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from the cupboard to his room. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything in here was broken. The month-old video camera was lying on top of a small working tank Dudley had once driven over the next door neighbor's dog. Wow. He just ran over a dog. That's just mean. In the corner, Dudley's first ever television set, which he'd put his foot through when his favorite program had been canceled. There was a large bird cage which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was on the shelf at the end, all bent because Dudley had sat on it. Dang, he can just bend up. He can just bend an air rifle. That's just sad. Other shelves were full of books. They were the only things in the room that looked as though they'd never been touched. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley bawling at his mother. I don't want him in there. I need that room. Make him get out. That's Moody. Make him get out. Harry sighed and stretched out on the bed. Yesterday he'd have given up anything to be up here. Today he'd rather be back in his cupboard with that letter than up here without it. Next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dudley was in shock. He'd screamed, whacked his father with his smelting stick, had been sick on purpose, kicked his mother, and thrown his tortoise through the greenhouse roof. He threw his turtle through the greenhouse roof, and he still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about this time yesterday and bitterly wishing he'd opened the letter in the hall. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the mail arrived, Uncle Vernon, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dudley go and get it. They heard him banging things with his smelting stick all the way down the hall, and then he shouted, "There's another one! Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, number 4 Privet Drive." Wait, what? Hold on, what? Okay, what, do you need me to reread something to you? Like, what do you need me to reread? Just tell me. With a strangled cry, Uncle Vernon leapt from his seat and ran down the hallway. No, the turtle. Yeah, he threw his turtle out the greenhouse window. Can we get an F in the chat for the turtle, though? Everyone put an F in the chat. Even I'll do it. Look, F in the chat for the turtle. Okay. With a strangled cry, Uncle Vernon leapt from his seat and ran down the hall, Harry right behind him. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Dudley to get to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Vernon around the neck from behind. After a minute of confused fighting, in which everyone got hit a lot by the smelting stick, Uncle Vernon straightened up, gasping for breath, with Harry's letter clutched in his hand. "Go to your cupboard, your bedroom," he wheezed at Harry. "Dudley, go. Just go." Harry walked round and round his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of his cupboard, and they seemed to know he hadn't received his first letter. Surely that meant they'd try again, and this time he'd make sure they didn't fail. He had a plan. The repaired alarm clock rang at 6 o'clock the next morning. Harry turned it off quickly and dressed silently. He mustn't wake the Dursleys. He stole downstairs without turning on any of the lights. He was going to wait for the postman on the corner of Privet Drive and get the letters for number 4 first. His heart hammered as he crept around the dark hall towards the front door. Ugh! Harry leapt into the air. He trotted on something big and squashy on the doormat. Something alive. Lights clicked on upstairs, and to his horror, Harry realized that the big squashy something had been his uncle's face. Uncle Vernon had been lying at the foot of the front door in a sleeping bag, clearly making sure that Harry didn't do exactly what he'd been trying to do. "I'm in the bus watching this. Hi, Oofy." He shouted at Harry for half an hour and then told him to go and make a cup of tea. Harry shuffled miserably off into the kitchen, and by the time he got back, the mail had arrived, right into Uncle Vernon's lap. Harry could see 3 letters addressed in green ink. "I want," he began, but Uncle Vernon tearing the letters into pieces before his eyes. Oof. Uncle Vernon didn't go to work that day. He stayed home and nailed up the mail slot. See, he explained to Aunt Petunia through a mouthful of mails, that if they can't deliver them, they'll just give up. "I'm not sure that'll work, Vernon." "Oh, these people's minds work in strange ways, Petunia. They're not like you and me," said Uncle Vernon, trying to knock in a nail with a piece of fruitcake. With the piece of fruitcake Aunt Petunia had just bought him. Dang. On Friday, no less than 12 letters arrived for Harry. They couldn't go through the mail slot. They had been pushed underneath the door, slotted through the sides, and a few even forced through the small window in the downstairs bathroom. Uncle Vernon stayed home again after burning all the letters. He got up a hammer and nails and boarded up all the cracks around the front, the back doors, so no one could go out. Could go out. He hummed "Tiptoe Through the Tulips" as he worked, and jumped at small noises. I mean, wouldn't it be a smart idea if they just slipped the letter through the whatchamacallit, through Harry's window? That would be much smarter, so that Harry could get it before anyone else. On Saturday, things began to get out of hand. 24 letters to Harry found their way into the house, rolled up and hidden in each side of 24 eggs, and their very confused milkman had handed Aunt Petunia through the living room window. While Uncle Vernon made furious telephone calls to the post office and the dairy, trying to find somebody to complain to, Aunt Petunia shredded the letters in her fruit. Blech. Aunt Petunia shredded the letters in her food processor. "Who on earth wants to talk to you this badly?" Dudley asked Harry in amazement. On Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon sat down at the breakfast table looking tired and rather ill, but happy. "No post on Sundays," he reminded them cheerfully as he spread the marmalade on his newspapers. "No dang letters today." Something came whizzing through the kitchen chimney as he spoke and caught him sharply in the back of the head. Next moment 30 or 40 letters came pelting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air trying to catch one. "Out! Out!" Uncle Vernon seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall. When Uncle Vernon and Dudley when Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out with their arms over their faces, Uncle Vernon slammed the door shut. They could hear letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off the walls and floor. "That does it," said Uncle Vernon, trying to speak calmly, but pulling great tufts out of his mustache at the same time. "I want all of you back in 5 minutes, ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No arguments." Hi.
You're talking
Live stream.
to.
I'm reading to the live stream.
Where are you live streaming to?
YouTube. Okay. That was so funny. "We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No arguments." He looked so dangerous with half his mustache missing that no one dared argue. 10 minutes later, they had all wrenched their way through the boarded-up doors and were in the car, speeding towards the highway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. His father had hit him round the head for holding them up while he tried to pack his television, VCR, and computer in his sports bag. They drove and they drove. Even Aunt Petunia didn't dare ask where they were going. Every now and then Uncle Vernon would take a sharp turn and drive in the opposite direction for a while. I think Aunt Vernon doesn't even know where they're going. Shake 'em off, he would mutter whenever he did this. They didn't stop to eat or drink all day. By nightfall, Dudley was howling. He had never had such a bad day in his life. He was hungry. He'd missed 5 television programs he wanted to see, and he'd never go so long without blowing up an alien on his computer. Uncle Vernon stopped at last outside a gloomy-looking hotel on the outskirts of a big city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with twin beds and damp, musty sheets. Dudley snored, not snorted, I'm dumb. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake, sitting on the windowsill, staring down at the lights of passing cars and wondering. They ate stale cornflakes and cold tinned tomatoes on toast for breakfast the next day. When they had finished, the owner of the hotel came over to their table. Excuse me, is one of you Mr. H. Potter? I only got about on 100 of these at the front desk. She held up a letter so they could read the green ink address. Mr. H. Potter, room 17, Railview, Cokeworth. What kind of name is Cokeworth? Okay. Harry made a grab for the letter, but Uncle Vernon knocked his hand out of the way. The woman stared. "I'll take them," said Uncle Vernon, standing up quickly and following her from the dining room. "Wouldn't it be better to just go home, dear?" Aunt Petunia suggested timidly, hours later, but Uncle Vernon didn't seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for, none of them knew. He drove them into the middle of the forest, got out and looked around. He shook his head, got back in the car, and went off again. They did the same thing in the middle of a plowed field, halfway across the suspension bridge, and at the top of a multi-level parking garage. "Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?" Dudley asked Aunt Petunia, dully, late that afternoon. Uncle Vernon had parked at the coast. It started to rain. Great raindrops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley sniveled. "It's Monday," he told his mother. "The great Hamberto's on tonight, and I want somewhere to stay with a television." Monday. This reminded Harry of something. It was Monday, and you could usually count on Dudley to know the days of the week because of television. Then tomorrow, Tuesday, was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his birthdays were never exactly fun. Last year, the Dursleys had given him a coat hanger, a pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks. Still, you weren't 11 every day. Really, they give him a coat hanger and old socks. That's just sad. Uncle Vernon was back, and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package, and didn't answer Aunt Petunia what he'd bought. When she asked what he'd bought. These darn British words, oh my gosh. "Found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone. Out." It was very cold outside the car. I'm gonna get in trouble. Oh my gosh. Don't get in trouble just because you want to hear the live stream. Nothing interesting is happening. I'm just reading. Okay. Oop. Smacked the iPad. Oop. Okay. "Found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone out." It was very cold outside the car. Uncle Vernon was pointing at what looked like a large rock way outside. Perched on the top of the rock was the most miserable little shack you could imagine. One thing was certain, there was no television in there. "Storm forecast for tonight," Uncle Vernon gleefully clapping his hands together. "And this gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us his boat." A toothless man came ambling up to them, pointing with a rather wicked grin at an old rowboat bobbing in the iron-gray water below them. "Dang it! I've already got us some rations," said Uncle Vernon, "so all aboard." It was freezing in that boat. Icy sea spray and rain crept down their necks. And a chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they reached the rock where Uncle Vernon, slipping and sliding, led the way to a broken-down house. The inside was horrible. It smelled strongly of seaweed. The wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden walls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Uncle Vernon's rations turned out to be a bag of chips and just 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire, but the empty chip bags just smoked and shriveled up. "Could do with some of those letters now, eh?" he said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he thought nobody stood a chance of reaching them here in a storm to deliver mail. Harry privately agreed, through the thought that didn't cheer him up at all. As night fell, the promised storm blew up around them. Spray from the high wind splattered the walls of the hut, and a fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a few moldy blankets in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. She and Uncle Vernon went off to the lumpy bed next door. Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could and curl up under the thinnest, most ragged blankets. That's just sad, though. The storm raged more and more ferociously as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable. His stomach was rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned by the low rolls of thunder that started near midnight. Do you even have class online? Well, no, technically not. My teachers, they just post work on Google Classroom. So I just did it all this morning at 6 a.m. Okay. Where was I? Oh, nuggets. Okay. Thank you. The light and dial of Dudley. Okay. His stomach rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned by the low rolls of thunder that started near midnight. The light and dial of Dudley's watch, which was dangling over the edge of the sofa on his fat wrist, told Harry that he'd be 11 in 10 minutes' time. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer, wondering if the Dursleys would remember at all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes to go. Harry heard something creak outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall in, although he might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house in Privet Drive would be so full of letters when they got back, he would be able to steal one somehow. My class finished at 3. Okay. What was that? 3 minutes. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house in Privet Drive would be so full of letters when they got back, he'd be able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes to go. Was that the sea slapping hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes to go. What was that funny crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling in the sea? 1 minute to go and he'd be 11. 30 seconds, 20, 10, 9. Maybe he'd wake Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1. Boom! The whole shack shivered, and Harry sat bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside, knocking to come in. Oop, chapter 4, my dudes. Chapter 4. Keeper of the Keys. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them. Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now he knew what had been in that long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." There was a pause, and then smash! Smash! The door was hit with such a force that it swung clean off its hinges with a defending crash, landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard, but you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under all that hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just bruised the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ya? It's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat. He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat, frozen with fear. "Good grief, Cece." "Bulge, you great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching, terrified, behind Uncle Vernon. "And here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle's eyes were crinkled into a smile. "Last time I saw you, you were only a baby," said the giant. "You look like your dad, but you got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. "I demand you leave at once, sir. You are breaking and entering." Ah, shut up, Dursley, you great prune, said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa and jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hands, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into the corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trotted on. Oof. Anyway, Harry, said the giant, turning his back on the Dursleys, a very happy birthday to you. Got something for you here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste all right. From the inside of his black overcoat, he pulled out a slightly squished box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday, Harry" written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on his way to his mouth, and what he said instead was, "Who are you?" Oof. The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubius Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea, eh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. I'd not say no to something stronger if you got it in mind." His eyes fell on the empty grate with a shriveled bag of chips in it, and he snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see. He bent over the fireplace. Good grief! He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light. Harry felt the warmth wash over him as though he'd sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of the pockets of his coat. A copper kettle, a squashy package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid that he took a swing from before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was full of the sound and smell of sizzling sausage. Nobody said a thing. Hi. Bye. Okay. Bye, Raindrop.
Bye, tortilla.
Bye, Soph. Full of the sound and smell of sizzling sausage. Nobody said a thing while the giant was working, but he slid the first 6 fat, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker. Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." "I'll be back." "Okay. Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley. That's right. The giant chuckled darkly. Your great puddin' of a son don't need fattening anymore, Dursley. Don't worry." "Oh, oof! He called him pudding. Get wrecked." Your great puddin' of a son don't need fattening anymore, Dursley. Don't worry." He passed the sausages to Harry, who was still hungry. He had never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take the eyes off the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed about to explain anything, he said. Finally, as though nobody seemed about ready to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said, "as everyone does. And like I told you, I'm the keeper of keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry," barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who shrank back into the shadows. It's them as should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you ever wonder where your parents learned it all?" "All what?" asked Harry. "All what?" Hagrid thundered. Now wait just 1 second. He had leapt to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. "Do you mean to tell me," he growled at the Dursleys, "that this boy knows nothing about anything?" Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school after all. His marks weren't bad. "I know some things," he said. "I can, do math and stuff." Okay, hold on. I dropped something. Okay, I'll find it later. But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, "About our world, I mean your world, I mean my world, your parents' world." "What world?" Hagrid looked as though What world? Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. Get ready, this is about to get loud, my dudes. "Dursley!" he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like "Mibble wibble." Hagrid stared widely at Harry. "You must know about your mum and dad. I mean, they're famous. You're famous." "What? My mum and dad weren't famous, were they?" You don't know. Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. "You don't know what you are?" he said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice.
Sorry, do you want some ice cream?
"No, thank you. I'm okay."
Okay.
Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. Stop right there."
I'm
Sir.
getting no sleep because of y'all.
Okay.
Sleep because of me.
Okay. Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell the boy anything. A braver man than Dudley Dursley would have quailed under the furious look of Hagrid. Hagrid. Bleh. Oh, hi, you're back. Hi, Raindrop. Okay, so since you're back, so basically, what part were we on when you left? Okay, so we're gonna read from the part where what's his face? Hagrid calls Dudley a pudding. Okay, you know what? Never mind. It doesn't even matter. Okay.
Chop, chop, a lollipop.
Okay. No. Shoo.
Relax and just.
Shoo. Before I throw this book at you, child. Okay. Stop, he commanded. Stop right there. I forbid you to tell the boy anything. A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quailed under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. "You never told him? Never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him? I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it, Dursley, and you've kept it from him all these years." "Kept what from me?" Harry said eagerly. "Stop! I forbid you!" yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Go boil your heads, both of you," said Hagrid. "Harry, get ready for the most iconic line, everyone. Harry, you're a wizard. You're a wizard, Harry." There was a silence inside the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. "I'm a what?" gasped Harry. "A wizard, of course," said Hagrid, sinking back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower. "A thumping good one, I'd say, once you've been trained up a bit. With a mum and dad like yours, what else would you be? And I reckon it's about time you read your letter." Harry stretched out his hand to take the yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green to Mr. H. Potter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sorcerer, Chief Warlock, Supreme Mugwort, International Confederate of Wizards. Yeah, that's a long name. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Yeehaw! Questions exploded inside Harry, his head like fireworks. He could not decide which to ask first. A few minutes he stammered. What does it mean they await me an owl? Galloping whatever. Whatever.
Sorry.
Give him back.
No, you have to take it.
Give him back. Give him back. I'll get him from you later. Okay. Galloping Gorgons, that reminds me, said Hagrid, clasping his hand to his forehead with enough force to knock over a cart horse, and yet, another pocket inside his overcoat, he pulled an owl, a real, live, rather ruffled-looking owl, a long quill and a roll of parchment. With his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note that Harry could read upside down. Dear Professor Dumbledore, giving Harry his letter, taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well, Hagrid.
Hello.
Shoo. Shoo.
Hello.
You're not allowed to show your face on camera. Shoo, child.
I'm not.
I'm going to yeet you out of the
Show
room.
my face on camera.
Yeah, but you still can't be in here. You are a distraction. Okay, I'm back. The sister had broken in. Okay. Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clammed it into its beak, went to the door, and threw the owl out into the storm. When he came back, he sat down as though it was as normal as talking on the telephone. Harry realized his mouth was open and closed it quickly. Where was I? Said Hagrid. But at that moment, Uncle Vernon, still ash-faced but looked very angry, moved into the firelight. Oop! He's not going, he said. Hagrid grunted. I'd like to see a great muggle like you stop him, he said. A what? Said Harry, interested. A muggle, said Hagrid. It's what we call non-magical folk, like them. And it's your bad luck. You grew up in a family. The biggest muggles. It's your bad luck. You grew up in a family. The biggest muggles I ever laid eyes on. We swore when we took him in we'd put a stop to that rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. We swore we'd stamp it out of him. Wizard indeed. You knew, said Harry. You knew I'm a wizard? Knew? Shrieked Aunt Petunia suddenly. Knew? Of course we knew. How could you not be? My dratted sister being what she was. Oh, she got a letter just like that, disappeared off at school, and came home every vacation with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. But for my mother and father, oh no, it was Lily this, Lily that. They were proud of having a witch in the family.
Hello.
She stopped to draw a breath and went ranting on. It seemed that she had been waiting to say all of this for years. Then she met that Potter at school, and they left and got married and had you, and I knew you'd be just the same, just as strange, just as abnormal. And then, if you please, she went and got herself blown up, and we got landed with you. Landed. And she did not get blown up, my dude. She actually got murdered by Voldy. Blown up? You told me that. Harry had gone very white. As soon as he found his voice, he said, Blown up? You told me they died in a car crash. Car crash! Roared Hagrid, jumping up so angrily that the Dursleys skirted back to the corner. How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's an outrage, a scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story when every kid in our world knows his name. Wow. But why? What happened? Harry asked urgently. The anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. I never expected this, he said in a low, worried voice. I had no idea. Dumbledore told me there might be trouble getting a hold of you. How much you didn't know. Ah, Harry. I don't know if I'm the right person to tell you, but someone's gotta. I can't let you go to Hogwarts not knowing it. Threw a dirty look at the Dursleys. Well, it's best you know as much as I can tell you. I can't tell you everything. There's a great mystery parts of it. He sat down. He stared into the fire for a few seconds, and then said, "Hi, Raindrop." And then said, "It begins, I suppose, with a person called, but it's incredibly, you don't know his name. Everyone in his world knows, too. Well, I don't like saying the name if I can help it. No one does. Why? Gulping gargoyles, Harry. People are still scared. Blimey, this is difficult. See, there was a wizard who went bad. As bad as you can go. Worse than worse. His name was, Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. Oh my gosh. Just give me a second, guys. Just give me a second. My sister's screaming for me. Why did you get yourself over here? Trying to get attention. Yeah. Okay, dudes, I'm back. So we're gonna go to the next part of the book, and then we'll be good. Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. Could you write it down? Harry suggested. Nah, can't spell it. All right, Voldemort. Hagrid shuddered. Don't make me say it again. Anyways, this wizard, about 20 years ago, started looking for some followers. Got him, too. Some were just afraid. Some wanted a bit of his power, 'cause he was getting himself powerful, all right. Dark days, Harry. Didn't know who to trust. Didn't dare get friendly with strange wizards or witches. Terrible things happened. He was taken over. Of course, some stood up to him. And he killed him. Horribly. The only safe place left was Hogwarts. Reckon Dumbledore's the only one who was afraid of. Didn't dare try taking the school. Not just then, anyway. Now your mom and dad were as good as a wizard and witch as I ever knew. Had boy and girl at Hogwarts in their day. Suppose the mystery is why who never tried to get him on his side before. Probably knew they were too close to Dumbledore to want anything to do with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade them. Maybe he wanted them out of the way. All anyone knows is he turned up in the village where you all was living on Halloween 10 years ago. You were just a year old. He came to your house and Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty spotted handkerchief and blew his nose with a sound like a foghorn. Sorry, he said, but it's all sad that your mom and dad, nicer people you couldn't find. Anyway, you know who killed him. And then this is the real mystery of the thing. He tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose. Or maybe he just liked killing by then. But he couldn't do it. Ever wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? It was no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful evil curse touches you. Took care of your mom and dad and your house even, but it didn't work on you. And that's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after he decided to kill him. No one except you. and he'd killed some of the best wizards and witches. And wizards and witches of the age. The McConnans, the Bones, the Prewerts, and you was only a baby and you lived. Something painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw the blinding flash of green light more clearly than he had ever remembered it, and he remembered something else for the first time in his life. The cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid watched him sadly. Took you from the ruined house myself on Dumbledore's orders. Brought you to this lot. The load of old tosh, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped. He had almost forgotten that the Dursleys were there. Uncle Vernon certainly seemed to have gotten back his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid. His fists were clenched. Now you listen here, boy, he snarled. I accept that there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. And all this for your parent. And all of this about your parents. Well, they were weirdos, no denying it. The world's better off without them, in my opinion. Asked for all they got, getting mixed up with these wizarding types. And just what I expected. Always knew they'd come to a sticky end. Okay, give me a second, dudes, real quickly. Okay, your girl is back. Okay. Sorry I keep leaving. At that moment, Hagrid leapt from the sofa and drew a battered pink umbrella from the inside of his coat, pointing it at Uncle Vernon like a sword. I'm warning you, Dursley. I'm warning you. One more word. In danger of being speared on the end of an umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, said Hagrid, breathing heavily, and sat back down on the sofa, which this time sagged down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask, hundreds of them. What happened to Sorry, I mean, you know who. Good question, Harry. Disappeared. Vanished. Same night he tried to kill you. Makes you even more famous. That's the biggest mystery, you see. He was getting more and more powerful. Why'd he go? Some say he died. Cod swallow, in my opinion. Don't know if he had enough human left in him to die. Some say he's still out there, biding his time, but I don't believe it. People who were on his side came back to ours. Some of them came out of trances. Don't reckon they could have done if he was coming back. Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere, but lost his powers, too weak to carry on. 'Cause something about you finished him, Harry. There was something going on that night, and he hadn't counted on. I don't know. Well, I don't know what it was. No one does. There's something about you stumped him all right. Once we get to chapter 5, I think we'll stop. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. Hagrid looked at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes. But Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure there had been a horrible mistake. A wizard, him, how could he possibly be? He spent his life being clouded by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he really was a wizard, why hadn't he turned them into warty toads every time they tried to lock him in his cupboard? If he'd once defeated the greatest sorcerer in the world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football? Hagrid, he said quietly, I think you must have made a mistake. I don't think I can be a wizard. To his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard, eh? Never made things happen when you were scared or angry. Harry looked into the fire. Now that he came to think about it, odd things ever happened when his aunt and uncle went. That odd thing, every odd thing that had ever happened made his aunt and uncle furious with him, and had happened when he, Harry, had been upset or angry, chased by Dudley's gang, and had somehow found himself out of their reach. Dreading going back to school with that ridiculous haircut, he managed to make it grow back. And the very last time Dudley had hit him, hadn't he gotten his revenge without realizing it? Hadn't he set a boa constrictor on him? Harry looked back at Hagrid, smiling, and saw that Hagrid was positively beaming at him. "See," said Hagrid. "Harry Potter, not a wizard. You wait, you'll be famous at Hogwarts." I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. But Uncle Vernon was not going to give in without a fight. "Haven't I told you? He's not going," he hissed. "He's going to Stonewall High, and he'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters. He needs all sorts of rubbish, spell books and wands, and if he wants to go, a great muggle like you won't stop him," he growled Hagrid. "Stop Lily and James Potter's son from going to Hogwarts? You're mad. His name has been down ever since he was born. He's off to the finest school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there, and he won't know himself. He'll be with the youngsters of his own sort for a change, and he'll be underneath the greatest headmaster Hogwarts ever had, Albus Dumbledore." "I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks," yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it over his head. "Never," he thundered, "insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me." He brought the umbrella swishing down the air to point at Dudley. There was a flash of violent light and a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and the next second Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped over his fat bottom, howling in pain. When he turned back on them, Harry saw a curly pig's tail poking through the hole in his trousers. And a whoop! Uncle Vernon roared, pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into the other room. He cast one last terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind him. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and stroked his beard. "Shouldn't have lost me temper," he said ruefully. "But it didn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig, but I suppose he was so much like a pig anyway there wasn't much left to do." Oh, can we get an F in the chat for Dudley? That's just sad. That is just sad, dudes. He cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. "Be grateful if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts," he said. "I'm not supposed to do magic. Strictly speaking, I was allowed to do a bit to follow you and get your letters to you and stuff. One of the reasons I was so keen to take on the job." "Why aren't you supposed to do magic?" asked Harry. "Well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got myself expelled. To tell you the truth, in my 3rd year, they snapped me wand in half and everything, but Dumbledore let me stay on as a gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore." Why were you expelled?" "It's getting late, and we got lots to do tomorrow. Gotta get you to town, gotta get all your books and that." He took off his thick black coat and threw it to Harry. "You can kip under that," he said. "Don't mind if it wriggles a bit. I got a couple of dormice in one of the pockets." And that's the 2 chapters that we're reading for today. Tune in for next time's live stream if you want. But I am not, my voice is leaving me, so I can't continue on. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have an amazing day, my friends. Bye!